Hello everyone, this is Warhawk Beyond 2040 and welcome to another edition of the Superman and Lois Season 1 review series. And today I am going to be talking about Episode 11, a brief reminiscence in between cataclysmic events, which I have just finished watching. And this episode was just absolutely fantastic. It felt like I was watching a Superman movie. Everything that I love about Superman, the mythology, the character, was well represented in this episode, and everything about it, from the way it was filmed, the music, the storytelling, the dialogue, the execution, from start to finish was just top notch. And it's very hard to say which is the best episode of this season, because every episode that I have reviewed all the way up to episode 11 has just been fantastic. It's very, very tough to choose which one I think is the best one. There hasn't been a single weak episode so far, and this episode was no exception. This was just like a mini movie. I just absolutely loved every second of it, and the time just flew by. It was just absolutely top notch. And in a way, this show, Superman and Lois, is everything that I've wanted to see from Superman for years. And season 1, to me, has absolutely done the justice that someone as iconic as Superman deserves. It's got callbacks to the classic Christopher Reeve movies. It's got callbacks to the comic books, a little bit of the DCAU, Man of Steel from the DCEU, you name it. This episode had it all and then some. And I just loved it. I was just absolutely blown away. And most of this episode, or at least for the first half anyway, was mostly set in flashback. And it was absolutely amazing. And we got to see the classic Superman costume from the Max Fleischer cartoons represented and showcased in the flashbacks. Loved every minute of that. It was just brilliant and so beautiful to see the classic costume in live action, because that's the first ever Superman costume before he got the iconic suit that we all know and love. And Tyler Hoechlin is just knocking it out of the park as Superman. And the same with Elizabeth Tulloch. She is well on her way to becoming a definitive Lois Lane in her own right, as I've said in past reviews. And these two have amazing chemistry together, and they just continue to get better and better. So I'm going to give a quick recap of what's happened so far, and then we're going to get straight into talking about episode 11. And before I get started, the way episode 11 ended just gave me chills, and I'm hoping we could see something really big in episode 12, because I think we will, because if this episode, especially with the way it's ended, is anything to go by, we are in for one hell of a ride as we're gearing up towards the season 1 finale of the show. So, as we've seen so far in Superman and Lois, Morgan Edge has revealed himself to be from Krypton and is kind of like Superman's brother, so to speak, although they don't share the same biological Kryptonian dad, so to speak. And Morgan Edge's mission has basically been to transfer Kryptonian subconsciousness into people and giving them superpowers. And as we saw at the end of episode 10, Superman used the Eradicator to drain all of these people of their powers, but at the same time, he temporarily lost his powers and ended up landing in the fortress in the North Pole. And that was how episode 10 ended. So this brings us now to episode 11, and I just can't even speak at the moment how good this really was. So with that all said, let's just get straight into it. Let's not waste any more time. Let's talk about episode 11, a brief reminiscence in between cataclysmic events. So this episode starts off by seeing a teenage Clark Kent following his sunstone through the frozen landscape where we saw his adult self later on. And the sunstone stops guiding him, and frustrated, he throws it into the snow, very similar to how Clark did in the first Superman movie. We then see pillars and ice erupt around him as the Fortress of Solitude takes form and blows him clear of its path. He heat visions his way out of the snowbank and makes his way to the opening of the fortress, where the sunstone now floats over a dais. He grabs it, and after examining the icy dices, elixires the sunstone to it, bringing Jor-El's hologram to life. He explains to the team that he is Jor-El and he is the boy's biological father. He tells Clark that he can learn lessons about who he is and why he was sent to Earth. Jor-El explains his powers, and just as we see in the Superman the movie, we see a montage of Clark learning to use his powers as he grows up from being the young Clark Kent into the adult version and eventually taking flight in a manner very similar to what we saw in the Man of Steel movie. After telling Jor-El he is ready, Jor-El tells him that he needs to reconnect with the world and learn why he wants to help humanity. We then see at the Kent's farm Clark arrived home to find Martha sweeping the porch. They embrace and she asks if he found what he was looking for. He tells her he did and gives her a quick download as to what's happened at the fortress. He tells her that he knows why he can do the things he can do and why he was sent to Earth. We see him replacing the Sunstone and looking around the Kent household, telling her that before he can leave, he needs to see Lana. Heading into town, we see Lana at a movie theatre, but before Clark can approach her, he sees her embrace Kyle and then zooms in with his telescopic vision and sees there is an engagement ring on her finger. We then see back at the home, Martha consoles him and then opens a suitcase, and in it she has packed some of his things, saying that she had a dream of him flying, and she gives him his first costume, which he made. So this was kind of a nice scene because everybody knows, who reads the Superman comics and knows the mythology, Martha Kent was a big part in creating the Superman costume, so I'm glad they paid homage to that in this episode because it's an important part of the story, and you can't really have Clark putting on the Superman costume for the first time without Martha Kent having a hand in that. So I'm glad they added that here, and it makes perfect sense. Clark tries to apologise for leaving after Jonathan Kent's death, but Martha tells him that she knows it's what he needed to do, and this is what he needs to do now. In Metropolis, we see Clark is hunting around for an apartment when he hears a car is out of control and changes into his costume for the first time. This brings us back to what we saw at the beginning of the first episode, where Superman saves the boy from being crushed by a falling car and then puts the car down, very similar to the cover we see of Action Comics issue 1 in 1938. After saving the boy, Clark rushes back and changes into the phone booth, which is classic Superman. He looks up after a brief encounter with a passerby and sees the Daily Planet. Inside the Daily Planet, we see Perry White blows off Clark's resume but hires him when he agrees to work cheap and do whatever it is he's asked of. We then cut back to the pilot where we see Lois and Clark meet each other for the first time. Now this was actually nice to revisit this scene because, as I mentioned in the very first review that I did for this series, seeing Lois and Clark meet each other for the first time with Tyler Hoechlin and Elizabeth Tulloch really brought back epic memories of the first Superman movie with Christopher Reeve and Margot Kidder, and they kind of paid homage to that but made it their own, but more modern and up to date, and it was such a nice touching scene and really heartwarming to see these two bounce off one another. We then see Lois is frustrated by the fact that ever since Superman arrived, systematic issues have taken a backseat to Superman's more flamboyant exploits, and Clark asks her, "How can I help?" And we basically see throughout most of this scene, we see Clark and Lois bonding and working together as she guides him through being a reporter in a big city like Metropolis. And then we see a montage of them investigating some neo-Nazis attacking minority-owned businesses. We also see them working late at night as they work together on the story, and Clark compliments Lois's reporting skills and then starts to excuse himself but ends up having a conversation where he's cornered into almost admitting his feelings for Lois. We then see the next morning she isn't at work when he arrives, and he flies off to stand in between her and this neo-Nazi, now in costume as Attribution, which is an old villain from the Superman comics, and he is about to kill Lois with a flamethrower, and Superman blows the flamethrower out, but the villain throws a pair of grenades in the crowd around him, assuming that Superman can't get to both in time. He does with super speed and blows the other grenade with his heat vision. Lois knocks out Automan with a taser and then has her first meeting with Superman and actually officially coins the name. We then see Lois with Superman on camera giving a live interview for the Daily Planet's video service. She asks what he stands for and he gives her truth, justice, and she goes, "Oh, well, the American way, of course, trying to get him to admit details about his private life. After her microphone malfunctions, a producer pulls Lois aside and tells her that she thinks Superman has a crush on her. She tells her that she isn't interested in Superman and that she's actually in love with Clark Kent. Now, this is kind of interesting because all throughout the Superman mythos, it's always been Lois in love with Superman, not Clark Kent. So, kind of a nice twist on that. Certainly different. The producer notices Superman looking at them and asks about his super hearing. We then see Lois goes back to the interview, which then cuts to Lois asking about to meet Martha for the first time. She has set up a small get-together to welcome Lois to Smallville and afterwards tells Clark that she's wonderful. Clark explains to Martha that he brought her to Smallville to tell her who he really is, and as they hug, Lois comes in and sees them. He takes her outside and flies for her, and then cuts to the pair of them in the newsroom kissing, and then he proposes to her in the fortress, which of course Lois accepts, and we see a nice beautiful montage of Lois and Clark's wedding. He tells Lois that he realises now why he kept his secret from everyone is so they can have a life together. Later, he's told Jor-El about the marriage, and Jor-El screams at Clark to get out. We then see Clark wakes up in a hotel room looking around, very confused. As Clark is wondering what day it is, Lois comes out to tell him she's pregnant. As Clark begins to grapple with the shifting reality around him, Lois continues in her script. At the doctor's office, Lois learns she is pregnant and is having twins, and we see a shadow flickering out of view. He walks towards it, but Lois keeps talking to him as if he were still talking to her in his flashback. Outside, we see Morgan Edge, who has infiltrated Clark's flashbacks to learn that Superman has a family and exploits to try and force him to surrender and join him on his side. Morgan Edge tells Superman that he will tell the entire world his secret and threatens to put his family and children in danger if Superman doesn't surrender. After Jor-El arrives to discourage him from listening to Raoul, Raoul destroys the Sunstorm, killing Jor-El and knocking Superman out, and then leaves. Now, watching these two go at it reminded me of Superman and General Zod fighting each other. Two superpowered Kryptonians at full power going at it and just demolishing everything. And that scene to me was like watching Man of Steel all over again, but in the fortress. It was just absolutely fantastic. Back in Smallville, Lois is talking to Lana and Kyle is worried when the truth finally comes out. He'll be one of the people the town blames for everything that's happened. In their living room, the boys are talking to Sarah, and she's frustrated by all the lies going on and thanks the boys for being honest with her. They're both guilty for not sharing everything with her, and she asks for a moment alone with Jordan. He starts to apologise for not telling her everything that was going on with her dad, but she kisses him and tells him that she doesn't just want to be friends anymore. Nice. Before Lois and the boys leave Lana and Kyle's house, Kyle stops her to apologise about the way he's treated her since she's got to town, telling her that she's good people and that he's glad she's part of Smallville. Ro drops down from the sky in front of Lois and the boys as they arrive home. Lois tells him to leave and he threatens the kids. After a brief squabble, he tells Lois that he'll let the kids live long enough to watch Lois die. As he charges up his heat vision, Superman drops out of the sky at the last moment and tells Ro that he'll do whatever he wants to save his family. Clark tells Lois he was right before being flown off with Morgan to the evil fortress in the desert, where we see a flashback to a young teenage Morgan Edge creating his own fortress in the desert by planting his sunstone and calling on his father, who berates him because by 1987 he didn't yet have the Eradicator. He says that he will train him so that he will have no weaknesses and begins torturing him with red sunlight. In the present day, the Rose are beginning to begin their plots with the Eradicator in their possession as they start to eradicate Clark, and Lois calls John Henry, telling him that it's happening just like you said it would. And that's how episode 11 ends, on a epic cliffhanger. Overall, excellent episode. Absolutely loved every second of it. The whole flashback montage for me was definitely the highlight, and Superman getting corrupted with the Eradicator. You know, as I said, Superman getting corrupted always makes for a good story, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how they're going to follow that up in episode 12. So that's going to be it from me. I'm going to wrap this up now. What did you think of episode 11? Did you enjoy it? What was your thoughts on the whole flashback montage with young Clark learning about his powers and becoming Superman for the first time? Did you enjoy that? What about seeing Superman in the classic Max Fleischer costume from the 1940s? Did you enjoy that? And also, what's your thoughts about Superman being eradicated, so to speak, and joining Morgan Edge's side? Do you think there could be a twist to this? And also, what kind of role do you think John Henry Irons is going to play now that the very thing that he's warned about is actually going to happen? You know what to do, guys. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave your thoughts and comments down below, and I will see all of you next time for another edition of the Superman and Lois Season 1 review series, where I am going to be talking about episode 12, which I am very much looking forward to talking about. It's going to be a really good one, especially with the way this episode ended. So until next time, take care everybody and stay safe, and once again, thanks for listening.